Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast live here on a Friday, December the 6th. I am your host, JT Ruhnke, writer and reporter here at Broadway Sports Media. You can follow me at JT_Ruhnke on Twitter. No Stoney today. Stoney Keeley on a Hot Read Happy Hour Friday is living it up, living his best life. As he texted me earlier today, he's going to a wedding this weekend in the great state of New Jersey. Some say the best state in the entire country.
Some say the worst state
some
in the
also
union.
say, well, you know what? That's something we can also debate on this show. But you might have heard someone's voice other than Stoney's, and it once again had to bring Old Reliable back onto the podcast here, onto the program. Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports. Easton, how are you doing today from what you said is a room under baby construction? Got a lot of things going on in the background, but nevertheless, how are you doing on this Friday, my good friend?
Yeah, you like this really put together setup I have here. Yeah, the office is fully under construction. There's so much stuff between behind me, and my backdrop that it was going to be far too much work to move it all the way back up for this because I thought I had off the air camera-wise from Wednesday morning, my last morning show for the week on A to Z, until the game day show. I thought I had a couple days to get it out of the way. And then you're like, can you come on? And I'm like, yes. And then it wasn't until I sat down here that I realized, crap. So we're rocking with this. And if you're watching, I apologize, but I'm happy to be here. It's great to be back. The old stomping grounds. What can I say? It's a good time. And it's something that I look forward to every time that you ask me to join you. So I wish we had a better game to talk about.
I was about to say.
Beggars cannot be choosers.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's despite the snooze fest that may take place on Sunday, it is good to be back here on the show. And if you're joining us watching this show as we talk about the Jaguars and Titans matchup, like Chef Rand here in the comments saying OG Hot Read, bringing it back here. Join us in the comment section of Broadway Sports Media or 440 Sports YouTube channels, where you can join Chef Rand and so many others later today talking about this matchup. I was going to say, it's kind of like, we did the reunion podcast. I forget what game that was before. It was some game earlier in November. I can't exactly remember, but we did that.
Vikings?
Maybe something like that. But I feel like this one is like the since we have to talk about this game, this horrid game, it feels like the scene from High School Musical 3, where all like the bad High School Musical, where they're like, the boys are back and they're singing that one song that they thought was going to be a big
junkyard hit. Oh
yeah. Banger. So yeah, it's a banger. But nonetheless,
by the way,
is
there a chance your computer microphone is picking you up right now and not your real microphone?
That would be really
let's double check
funny.
those settings.
Yeah, let's double check those settings.
It kind of sounds like it, but I can't tell. I think your computer has good audio.
Oh, does it?
Not as good as your actual microphone.
Not as good as my other one. Okay, well, we can check that real quick here.
But it'd be a shame if we went the entire podcast with subpar audio quality.
That's true. And keeping me on my game. Is this better? Hello? Are we good now?
I don't. In the settings on StreamYard, does it show you as your input being the focus right?
Let me see. Yeah, it says that my. Yeah, I think we're here. Okay.
Okay. Then that's why I said maybe. I don't know. It was good, but I couldn't tell if it was really good.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess we're going to keep going. I mean, you were right. I totally did not press the button on the back of my Scarlett back there. So, you know what?
Well, maybe that was it. Maybe that was it.
Thank you for looking out for me. Either way, we're going to get into some wonderful Jaguars and Titans talk here today. But before we do that, got to give a big shout out to our sponsors of this show, Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages. If you have to force yourself, if you're a strong-willed person like Easton and myself watching this game this weekend, you might just do yourself a favor and head on down to Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages to get your fix for the weekend, because they simply have the best selection of beer, wine, and spirits across the Nashville and Middle Tennessee area. Got to check them out. More on them later. So, Easton, this is a really interesting game, because I was asking you before the show today, I needed a vibes check on like where you are in this, in terms of what you think the outcome of this game is. And you told me that you think there's a very real possibility that the Titans just come out and they just beat the brakes off of this Jags team. And so I thought that was a little interesting because as well, I do think that there's a lot of upset potential that the Titans may have, or that the Jaguars may possess in this game here. As Kenneth says, I have a bit of an echo. Let me see if
Now we just can't hear you at all. Now there's no audio. Now you're just talking to a wall. Unless I'm the one that can't be heard. Oh, JT's muted now. Hang on. We're getting there, I think.
Hold on.
Oh, I hear him now.
Let me.
Oh.
Okay. Oh my God.
Now we don't have light.
Now we don't have light. Everything is going wrong. Just
Falling apart.
We are falling apart here. But hey, you know what? That's okay.
We hear. Wait.
Are we good now?
Talk now.
Hello.
Talk to me.
Hello.
Me,
I'm here.
Yes. You sound better now.
Oh. Okay.
The audio is fixed, and the light has come back now. So I think we're finally there.
I think we're finally good. I don't know if it was Kenneth or anyone in the comments trying to sabotage. Maybe a Stony from New Jersey accidentally hit a few buttons.
You well now, and you sound correct. So I think we're ready to rock.
Well, I think we're ready to rock. And picking up where I left off, you have this idea that the Titans may just beat the brakes off the Jags. I think that the Jags may have a sneaky chance at upsetting the Titans this week. And so I wanted to do a little bit of a game today for our show, which I would like to call Convince Me Otherwise, because I do, on this show, I think there is room for many different opinions of these games to be discussed. And I'm not open to having my viewpoint of this game this weekend changed or swayed in any given way. And so I think how I wanted to do it is, we're going to give out our arguments, and we're going to try to convince one another that this game is going to go the way that we think it's going to go. Along with some other topics scattered throughout that happened this week, because there are a few I think that we have to talk about. And if however, if I bring one of these up and we both agree, we can talk about why it's unrealistic, it's realistic, just kind of go through our thoughts. But I think we might butt heads on a few of these. So without further ado, let's dive into a couple Titans topics here. The first one doesn't really have to do with this weekend's game, although it probably could. Convince me otherwise that Colt Anderson just shouldn't be fired right now. And this really stems on the spot right now. I will do no
such thing. Next question.
Because it really stems from the comments he made yesterday in his press conference availability, in which Nick Suss asked him, what are some of the adjustments that you have made this season in terms of your coaching? Because, of course, Brian Callahan has talked a lot about how he's had to make some adjustments in his coaching process and whatnot. And it really comes down to what Colt Anderson said yesterday, that I really do think is a fireable offense one way or another. Before we move on with this Colt Anderson discussion, I hate that we have to continue to talk about him, but he brings so many juicy moments every single week. And, I can't help myself sometimes. And so this is what Colt Anderson had to say about the things that, that he's learned and he's adjusted on with his first year on the job.
Technique, just, working with these guys, just making sure we're all on the same page, communicating on the same level at that point. But, just being confident in what I'm doing and making sure the guys there's clarity in everything that we're doing. Early in the year, you could probably say that I was assuming guys knew what they were doing. So I felt like I, have learned, how guys learn in certain situations, and, we're going to continue to grow and get better.
Man, all I can really say is, man, you assumed, and your face really says it all there. It's so good. I almost think you're frozen on your side, because you that one just has to kind of sit there with you for a second. You assume that your players knew what to do. And of course, I tweeted this out. I think Terry McCormick also tweeted it out, and it gained a lot of traction. And of course, I guess you could see that maybe was taken a little bit out of context. But I think the counter argument here is that you assume that your players knew what they were supposed to do, when essentially most of if not 75% of the special teams rules changed this year. It is a whole new world for special teams. And so you come in and you assume that your players know what to do. I don't know. It really irked me the wrong way, especially kind of also talking about yesterday, his idea on Jaquan Jackson, just kind of the difference between him fumbling the ball and muffing it, wasn't really a great answer either on that one. And so I like, what are we doing here, man? Like, and I understand that. I think the counter argument there is that does it really matter if he's fired now or at the end of the season? At the end of the day, I don't think it really does matter, because once again, I think it comes down to personnel. We had a huge, lengthy rant on Tuesday's show between me and Stoney on this topic, and it really just comes down to the personnel. But when we try to back Colt Anderson a little bit on Tuesday and say it's not entirely his fault, and then he goes and he says things like that, I just don't know what we can do anymore.
Idiot.
I just don't think that. I don't know. It sounds like you share very much the same sentiment as I do. Yes?
Yes, of course. We're going to file that firmly under things you should not say at the podium if you're a coach in the NFL. I think that he was just telling the truth. And so I don't hold it against him. There's a genre of quotes we get in media. And I've talked with some other people on the beat. I've talked to Nick Suss about this, and my colleague Sam Phelan about this. There is a genre of quotes where we walk away mentally saying, "Thank you, but I'm sorry," because it's something that is awesome for us. It is good slop. Thank you very much for this delicious meal of a quote you just gave us. But also, I'm sorry, because you should not have said that. And we're going to run with it now because you said it out loud. But yeah, that what I think, if I'm, the goodwill in me, my interpretation of that, if all joking aside, is that he was surprised early on by some of the more fundamental things he had to coach guys up on. And maybe that led to them starting slowly and led to them not being a very polished unit, that he thought, he was a professor receiving a class prepared for a 401 class, and they were really at a 201 level, is what I think he means. And even then, a good coach identifies that real quick in August and fixes it then. It doesn't take a couple weeks in September of back-to-back blocked kicks for them to start to realize, oh, maybe I need to dumb down the curriculum a little bit. And so it's just a really bad look. And the idea of the format of our game here convinced me otherwise. I will be doing no such thing. I will not be convincing you that he does not need to be fired. I will convince you. Well, I guess I don't have to, because it sounds like we agree that there is no reason for them to fire him now. You are not playing for anything in the postseason. You don't have, I have it on relatively good authority that there is not really an in-house option to replace him. People say, it can't possibly get worse. Put a warm body in his job. It can always get worse. We learned that was one of the fundamental lessons learned here on the Hot Read podcast for those longtime listeners when it comes to potential, offensive line takes in the past summers. It can always get worse. So don't make the same mistake that we have learned together here on the show in the past. But it does certainly, I have maintained the opinion now for, I'm trying to think of when was the point. I think it was really the Lions game. The Lions game was the point where I said, okay, this guy's pre-fired. He's a dead man walking. It's over. There's really nothing I think he can do for me the remainder of the season. Even if it's perfect, I'm still like, I'm all right. So we'll have to have that conversation, for every day that passes once the Titans season is officially over, that he is still employed by the team. We can all collectively get angrier and angrier. And I don't necessarily even know if it's fair. I know our friend Zach Lyons has been on this crusade a little bit about how, he might really be a young coach that will work out. And it was a really, really rough start. And I made this analogy with Teresa Walker in the media room yesterday. I do feel for the guy in the sense that it's like you gave the dumbest kid in class the hardest test. It's like the kid that, in grade school, when reading comprehension was the focus when you're younger, and you get broken up in the class by like reading levels. And it's like, okay, here are the level 3 kids. And then there's the level 5 kids. They are book clubs on the other side of the classroom. It's like one of the level 3 kids accidentally got a level 5 test this year, and it's going exactly how you thought it was going to go. So it's not fair in terms of the personnel he's been given to work with. But at the same time, I'm afraid your reading comprehension is below adequate standards, and you're going to have to go.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, now things probably, I wouldn't rule it out that like things get so catastrophically bad after they got better. Like if the Jaguars were able to run back like 2 this weekend, like, I don't know, maybe we're having a different discussion.
You would have to have another Lions game. It would have to be the Lion where it's, you're teetering on most return yards allowed in a single game.
Yes.
That it would take that.
Yes.
And even then, I don't know if they'd do it.
I
think
because
would,
I can't. Kenneth brings up a great
I
point
mean,
here. Yeah. Kenneth brings up a great point. He says Callahan could simply be an end of season firing type of coach. The real problem will be if he keeps him in 2025.
Well, there's no could, by the way. That is his philosophy. I know that. We've talked to him about that in the past. He's not. I mean, and Vrabel was this way as well, except for the time that one of his coaches got a player literally killed on the field.
Yes.
So that's kind of the bar. And to both of those coaches' points, I've heard it come out of both of their mouths at some point. Like the fundamental philosophy there is
give them every chance, right?
Well, yes, but more than that, it's about being a functional franchise. Dysfunctional franchises are the ones that make in season, they go willy-nilly, snap emotional decision firings. And it's the Jets firing Robert Saleh when they're 2-3 to begin the year, whatever that was. It would be barely below 500, and then they fire their, they replace their OC, and they fire their GM, and all of this happens in season, and things just collectively get worse. Like it begets clown showery if you're making those kinds of moves, generally speaking. So I respect that personally. I know it's not fun and it requires patience. And if this team was, it also matters how competitive you are to me. Really, it does. If this Titans team was like, if this was the Chargers and they were, same record, same level of talent, and you're like, well, we got to finish strong here, real playoff team, then maybe it's like, okay, we got, what? It's time to address the issue somehow, some way. But I don't see any reason for them to do it right now.
Yeah, I agree. And Roshan says he doesn't think that quote was necessarily taken out of context, but he's also not moved at it by a guy's foot in the mouth moment. Wouldn't make a difference if he were saying the right things if the unit still sucks. True. I think that's very fair there. A little bonus one before I move on, because we also heard this today. Brian Callahan would not commit to who the punt returner would be necessarily on Sunday. Of course, that was a huge thing all week about Jaquan Jackson kind of potentially losing his spot as the returner role there. Brian Callahan makes no leeway with that today, but this has been in my head
the implication is that it's somebody, mystery man, not named Jaquan Jackson.
Yes,
so
I think that was like
in the game of Guess Who. We've put one face down in this game of Guess Who.
I guess the long way around is that we still like seeing Jaquan out there as the main punt returner this week would be a surprise, would it not? Like,
it would be more than a surprise. It would be a travesty. It would be reason for genuine ire. And the messaging has all been that they're not. We asked him today, if Jaquan's not the punt returner, will he even be active on game day? And he was like, well, we'll see if Jaquan's active. On Monday, we asked, like, what are you guys going to do to address punt return? He's like, we're going to try everybody. So, yeah, I mean, I've actually tried since we heard that earlier today to like behind the scenes figure out if they actually know yet. And I have also I've not gotten a private update on this from anybody inside the building. So they may actually not know. Like, I don't know. My guess, and this is not an educated guess from sourcing, this is purely a guess. I feel like it'll be Kinsey, and I hope that it's Kinsey because it should be Kinsey. So that's where my money is at. I think they elevate him and that it's Kinsey this week.
He's always been the stopgap there, right? And I think that given right now that, along with it, Jaquan Jackson has not been exactly utilized to a big extent in the offense either. Like, he's been used in a jet sweep here or there, but like not having him active for this game doesn't really, I think, take away any like capability of your offense right now, because outside of those 2 plays a game, and maybe a couple run packages, you're not missing much. And that's something I think Mason Kinsey could fulfill. Maybe not the jet sweep role, but some of the run packages for sure. But he does give you that stopgap there. And I think that's also, makes him just one game away from getting an NFL lifetime pension. So go get your money. Boy, I'm rooting for you out there. Mason Kinsey continues to be in the streets here working it. Roshan says,
can't get rid of him.
Roshan says, let our favorite quirked up white boy return punts. And I'm right there with you. Next one, another wide receiver on this team. And I think we'll probably agree with this one before we get into the weeds on really what I have to talk about here today. Convince me otherwise that Calvin Ridley will not just have a massive day against the Jaguars this week. This is something I think that we agree with, because it's a little thing that you put in my ear, the way the aura around Calvin Ridley this week. It feels like it may just mean a little more for him this week. Before we talk about Calvin Ridley and the day that he potentially could have this week, here's what Nick Holtz said about Calvin Ridley's potential return against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and his own as well.
I was about to say, underrated storyline here, the Nick Holtz
revenge game.
Come on, this is what we're really showing up for.
Here's what Nick Holtz had to say.
That you go against a bunch of people you know and your friends and things like that, and I'm sure there's probably a little bit extra for him, but at the same time, Calvin prepares every week, like with great enthusiasm, kind of energy. So I haven't really seen a change from that regard. But I think anytime you go against people you know really well, you always want to have a good performance. And I'm sure, I don't want to speak for him, but I'm sure he wishes maybe felt like they offered more money or whatever he wanted to, however he wanted it to play out. But I think he's happy with how it played out. But there's always that extra motivation to really kind of show somebody that you used to be with and people to go play well.
What's it like for you?
Probably a little bit different for me. I left for probably a clear promotion and that kind of stuff, and I'm really grateful to them for the opportunity. It's a bunch of great coaches there, a lot of great people, a lot of great players, and so I've I don't really have the same, I would say, maybe feelings as he does, maybe, but I don't want to speak for him either.
And this one really showed me, I think. I remember when I called Nick Holtz just a guy way back in the off season. He's just become kind of a chill guy. Like, I think he's the NFL embodiment of the chill guy meme, just because he just kind of gets up there and he does his chill thing. But like, there is some truth to that maybe it doesn't all mean that, and because he got a promotion. But for Calvin Ridley, man, I think given the narrative of how he flip-flopped from Jacksonville to Tennessee in the offseason, the kind of start that they've had this season so far, just kind of maybe not playing up to expectations where he wants to be, it's a really good spot for Calvin Ridley on an offense that continues to be ascending. Will Levis continues to look good, trying to string together now 5 weeks in a row of solid quarterback play against a team that ranks, I think, last in terms of EPA, defensive EPA in success. I think they're maybe bottom half in success rate. This is the spot for Calvin Ridley to have his franchise defining moment early on for the Titans here. And so I think this is the one that we agree on probably the most out of any of these, but there's no doubt in my mind that Calvin Ridley may just by himself to take the team on his back this week and try to will the Titans to a win.
Yes, very possible. I will demonstrate my faith in this happening in our best bet segment later, but you know what? Jerry Jeudy revenge spot part 2 in week 14. Give it to me. Give it, or actually in week, I guess it was technically week 13. The point is, this week, I think we're going to see 2 massive revenge games. One of them already happened. It was Jerry Jeudy with the Browns in Denver on Monday night. And then this Sunday, I think 6 days later, Calvin Ridley has the ability listen, Jeudy had 230 yards and a touchdown or something. Let's relax on that. But I think that it could be a really big day for him. I know that the Titans know that this is a thing. I know that Will Levis knows this is a thing. I know that they would love nothing more but to demonstrate what they have and what the Jaguars no longer have on Sunday against the, last I checked, 31st or 32nd ranked passing defense by EPA allowed it's there for the taking. And the worst case scenario here, as the guy that is in a moment going to argue that this Titans team could just kill the Mac Jones Jaguars. Worst case is that they get up, it's like they get up early. Mac Jones is just giving the ball away. Like it's clearly a mismatch and they just run the ball out the rest of the day. And Levis completes 13 passes and it's like, man, and they win handily and it's like, cool, but not for our narrative. So, if they do get up, I needed today to mention to Brian Callahan, hey, Dan Campbell mentality. If you get up in this game, just foot on the throat and then stomp over and over, run this score up. Do not start getting conservative, air it out, take some shots specifically to number 0 and see what happens.
Potentially my wallet is also banking on this one as well.
That's not potentially. My wallet is banking on this one. So yeah, let's make it happen.
And Chef Ran here saying in the comments, starting Levis in fantasy this week with Jaden Daniels on bye might flex NWI also. I think also if the Jaguars know that they have to stop Calvin Ridley this week, it leaves a lot of potential for NWI to do just, make his appointment touchdown. It makes his appointment touchdown that much easier this week. And so I think that this is just a spot where Calvin Ridley has been a motivated guy who's been motivated by things outside of just his play. Kenneth saying he has gotten so much crap from Jags fans and has been chirping back. And so I think this is a massive spot for him this weekend, which brings us to the things we probably will not exactly agree on. And that is that there is still very much a chance, I think, that the Titans could be a upset candidate this week as a 3.5 point favorite. I believe maybe just a flat 3.
Flat 3 now. Yeah.
Flat 3 right now as a home favorite against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And really for me, it starts with the depletion of personnel and depth on the secondary and linebacking units here for the Titans. Convince me otherwise. Convince me that things with the interior linebackers this week are going to be okay. And I think this starts with the update today that both Kenneth Murray and Jerome Baker, the two Titans starting linebackers, have not practiced in consecutive days, not practicing on Thursday, not practicing on Friday. We heard earlier in the week from Brian Callahan that Kenneth Murray would be up in the air in terms of if he would play or not. We heard from Paul Koharski and others today that Kenneth Murray said the plan right now is that he's playing. However, Brian Callahan said with Jerome Baker and Kenneth Murray missing practice this week, rookies Cedric Gray and James Williams got some reps along with Luke Gifford. Callahan said all the interior linebackers cross-trained at both spots and can play either if asked to. And to that point there, that's all well and good that they're being cross-trained. But we've seen time and time again that the Titans defense, especially last week against the Commanders, can't do the little things right. They can't even execute these simple things on defense right. How am I expected to believe that when you're looking to see more performances in the worst case scenario that Jerome Baker and Kenneth Murray both miss this game, and we get some horrid rotation of special teams ace Luke Gifford, 2 rookies in Cedric Gray and James Williams, and then some Otis Reese in there? How am I expected to believe that this is a team that can execute to the way the Denard Wilson defense needs to this week when we haven't seen them do it pretty much in a while? Outside of the Houston game, we've continued to see time and time again this team not be able to come together on the little things, and that's what's hurt them the most.
Yeah, but the Houston game was just 2 weeks ago, so we actually have seen it. It was 2 weeks ago. The reason why I disagree with you on this is that I understand that I completely understand that on paper the people playing linebacker, the personnel situation there is tenuous. And it's hard to wipe what we saw last week in Washington out of our heads from those guys. But the real straw that stirs the drink on the run game in particular are the 2 big guys in the middle. And I know that they were betrayed in big part by, when they did not step up, nobody behind them stepping up at all. And so any mistake on the first line became a massive mistake down the road. And so it gets amplified in that way. But I don't see, one game like that, as jarring as it is, does not really fundamentally shake my faith in Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons and the guys on that front to be the players, be the unit that we've seen them be for basically the entire year until the last 10 seconds. If we see another game like that and we have two, once is an instance, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern, and we'll be well on our way to a pattern, and I'll have to adjust my thinking. But I'm not there yet on that being an issue, especially against a group in Jacksonville who have maybe been the 1.01 of disappointing run games of the entire year, at least from a fantasy standpoint. It's been really, really bad. And especially when you've got a bad quarterback, sorry to your boy McCorkle, when you got a bad quarterback playing for you on Sunday, he's not going to take much pressure off of those guys running. He's not. And he shouldn't. If he does, we got issues.
And that's the thing. That's what I'm so scared about, is that a guy like him is going to be able to, because
our disagreement on this whole episode boils down to 3-4 months ago when you and I had the most heated argument we ever had on the show about Mac Jones and Joe Flacco, and your fundamental belief in Mac Jones for some godforsaken reason, and my logically fundamental disbelief in Mac Jones because he's clearly a bad quarterback.
If Kenneth Murray does play in this game, I maybe feel a little better, because I
was going to ask you if you felt better if the 2 rookies played. Like, is just
listen, I would no, I would not personally, because you go back to what Brian Callahan said on Monday about, when Kenneth Murray went out of that game. We heard from Brian Callahan when he said it's a confidence thing that Luke Gifford, with the green dot and being able to make the calls and get everybody lined up, that's a lot to put on a rookie off the bench. But certainly there's going to be some opportunities for those guys to play, and they're going to have some chances that they maybe would not otherwise due to injuries.
Give me Kenneth and Cedric.
I would be interested.
Thanks for coming out.
I mean, for what I believe, like, I feel like the vibes right now on Jerome are not good. So, like, we're going to get one of these guys playing the green dot. I'm here for the Cedric Gray green dot experiment this week.
Where were you for the 4th round pick Cedric Gray coming out party against Jacksonville at home on December 8th? Where were you for that game? I'll be seated right here.
I'll be seated in the press box watching very, very closely, because he played once again 13 snaps on special teams, did not get in the rotation after Kenneth Murray went down. Luke Gifford with 9 snaps in that game, Otis Reese with 8 after Kenneth Murray went down. So they got some run. I just don't see, based on this precedent between the confidence thing and this being a game where the Titans, at least for the kind of vibe of the locker room and building the culture here, like, this is the game that I think the Titans know that they should win. Like, it's a game for them to get everything out of their heads from last week in Washington and kind of get back on track with the development of the culture building here in Tennessee. I just don't see how you would really get a guy like Cedric Gray, who has only played probably less than 60 snaps all season in the last 2 weeks. Like, I don't see how you put him there.
I don't know if it's even
that was being very generous.
Generous.
Once again, I don't know how many special team snaps he played in Houston. That being said, like, I feel as much as people just want to see, like, Cedric Gray and James Williams and see what they have.
Take that number and half it. He's played 30 snaps.
He's played 30? All right, there you go.
Like 11 30 snaps on kick coverage, 13 on kick return, and 6 on punt return.
And so I may get into this when we get to our next one here, but
which means he's due. Put that man on defense.
There's something to be said about seeing the young boys play. There's also something to be said about giving them their first snaps here, where they can be mistake prone, to a guy in Mac Jones who is also mistake prone. Don't let him get consistent.
Is going to capitalize on any mistake.
Don't let him get consistent.
Don't give that guy an inch. He'll take a mile.
And so I don't know. God. I am very worried about the Titans' interior linebacking core in this game, especially if Kenneth Murray doesn't play. If he is, I still am concerned about what they can do in coverage, mostly because Roger McCreary also is looking, leaning towards not being able to go in this game. I understand Cheeto Awuzie is back, and so with him back, do we see maybe a little bit of Jarvis or Darrell Baker kind of move into that nickel a little bit to play on the inside and help out?
Jarvis. I think
that's
we'll see more of Jarvis inside.
When I was writing my article about, the depth problems and injury issues right now, I think that was where I was, because he has at least the ability, and he's played there before in college, played there a little bit in the preseason as well when they were kind of getting the starter snaps there. Still, it's a lot of moving pieces around where we've talked about this team, even when they have their quote unquote full strength right now, even though there's a lot of injured pieces, like the full strength of this team is still just not being able to execute on the littlest things. And so getting a guy like Luke Gifford in there, getting a guy like, with Cedric Gray or any of those guys in there concerns me just a little bit, but I do understand your point there. We'll have to see. And so that's, I think, where I stand on the depth and the defense here. If you're watching live with us here on Broadway Sports Media or 440 YouTube channel, thank you for joining in and chiming in here in the comments. Like Lewis, who says he's first on the like button. Make sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button over here on Broadway Sports Media and 440 Sports YouTube channels. If you're watching us on Twitter or Facebook, what are you doing? Get on over to those YouTube channels and hang out here in the comments with us.
On the A to Z show this morning, I wasn't even on the morning show, but Lewis was also in the comments, and he was calling for Sam to be fired because he wanted more of me. So I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what I did to make Lewis so happy, because he's back here to listen to me blather on again today.
It certainly seems like that way. I think earlier in the comments here, he wanted to knock me out. He said
Mama said knock you out.
Mama said knock you out, Jay
know
Little T.
I don't know
what that means either. But,
got it. Hang on, but throw his thing back up there. Always shouting out Louis. He's got the horns down A to Z logo as his thumbnail. It's A to Z down.
The A to Z down logo.
Yeah.
I love it. Nice.
And it's not even a graphic. It's a picture of a t-shirt, which I guess he bought from the merch shop. So shout out Lewis for
Thank you for your money.
My favorite thumbnail always.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. But before we move on with the rest of our conversation, I have to give a shout out to our wonderful and amazing sponsors here on the Hot Read podcast, Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages. Sinkers Beverages, of course, has been serving the East Nashville area for over 40 years with simply the best liquor, beer, and wine selection of any liquor store I've seen here in Nashville. That's why they are a 4-time Best of Nashville Liquor Store of the Year. You got to go check them out. And when you do, you got to sign up for their in-crowd, where you get special benefits, allocations, and bi-weekly tastings that you can only know about when you sign up for their in-crowd. Got to give them a follow on all of their social medias at SinkersBev on Twitter and Sinkers.Nashville on Instagram. And if you can't make it out there, don't worry, because they deliver the booze to you. Just simply search them, Sinkers, on Uber Eats, and they drive so you can drink responsibly, I might add. Got to give a huge shout out as well to Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, who have been serving that area for over 50 years. Thank you to Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages for sponsoring the show. All right, as Easton stuffs his mouth full because he's just a hungry boy over there. Where are we snacking on? Some cheese and crackers, it looks like? I don't know.
We are. Yes.
Wonderful. But
this Hot Read Happy Hour ad read moment to just
there you go. It's some little charcuterie during your Hot Read Happy Hour
basically,
here. I gotta love it. You know what? Hey, next time you want some of that charcuterie, head on over to
have
Sinkers.
that over there too?
Well, no, just find a great wine pairing for your charcuterie over there.
That's right.
You know,
that's all I'm missing is a nice glass of wine right now.
Yeah, I mean, hey, aren't we all? So this, especially for this conversation, because I feel like you're gonna need one after it, because I won't back down. I will not back down.
On McCorkle? Oh God.
Convince me otherwise that Mac Jones cannot just beat this team with what they're running right now. And so here's my argument right now.
I'll hear you out.
I think it's fair to say that the Titans pass rush, even against, I do think when you look at the last 4 or 5 games or so, that Houston game, when it comes to pass rush, has been a little bit of an outlier. Like, they were able to get to CJ Stroud in that game in a way that we haven't seen them get to a quarterback and finish on a quarterback in other games. We've seen the way that, if Sam Darnold can outmaneuver some of these guys, I think Mac Jones also possesses the same white boy, powers to navigate the pocket here. And so, like, if the Titans continue to show us the kind of pressure that we've seen from this front four between Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat, if we're seeing them get a lot of double teams, that means we're relying on Harold Landry and Arden Key, two guys who, for better or for worse, seem to have lost a step or two in their game. Like, the production is simply not there. And so if Mac Jones is going to be able to beat this team this week, they're going to have to operate within their schedule. And what I mean by that is the way they operated in that game against Houston there. For better or for worse, Mac Jones came out of that game with a 105 QB passer rating, threw for 2 touchdowns and almost led a comeback against a Houston Texans team that was kind of a little bit reeling from the emotional ongoings that went on, the murder or so that went on against Trevor Lawrence earlier in that game. Nevertheless,
you want me to be your villain? I'll be your villain.
Oh, believe me, I can't wait to talk about that when we get to the game after his suspension is up against the Titans. I'm sure that's going to be a real fun one.
He's going to try to kill one of them out there. It's going to be awful.
Yeah. Nevertheless, Mac Jones this past week had a 2.59 time to throw, according to Next Gen Stats, 5th quickest in week 13, an 87.5% first read throw percentage, 3rd highest in week 13, and the 6th best average depth of target in week 13 at 9.9. And when you look at that, you might say, okay, their goal is to get the ball out fast, to get the ball out early. And I kind of counter with, that's exactly what Jaden Daniels and company did last week against this team. Now, was it in different situations when they were able to get the ball out fast? Yes, they were running the ball. So maybe that's the counter argument here, is that if the Jaguars simply cannot run the ball, which is probably more than likely, maybe this doesn't happen. However, if Mac Jones is able to keep on a consistent schedule this week, much like he did last week, you're going up against two guys who one has really hurt the Titans in the past in Evan Ingram. And then also maybe my sleeper bona fide rookie wide receiver of the year out of all the receivers, Brian Thomas Jr., who has been playing absolutely lights out. Brian Thomas Jr., 7.1 yards after the catch per reception, a guy, a stat where the Titans have not been, great. They've been fine against yards after the catch in mitigating those big plays, but they certainly have not been not susceptible to it. And as well as just how he's been able to dice up the middle of the field. I mean, a 37.5% separation win rate on slant routes, according to my favorite guys over at Fantasy Points Data. That it's their ASS stat, their average separation score. So Brian Thomas Jr., big ass against big ass when you're dealing with the middle of the field. And then a 22.6% separation win rate on crossing routes this season. You bring in all of those things that he can do. He can play anywhere on the field, combined with, and this is probably where you're going to get me, if Brian Thomas Jr. and Mac Jones are just able to connect on one of those overthrown or underthrown deep shot balls that combined for 146 unrealized air yards last week.
The given being that it's not an accurate ball. Got it. Yep. With you so far.
If we can see them hit one, I do think that there's a chance that Brian Thomas Jr. poses such a big threat against this team that they just aren't simply prepared for, especially if you're having to move a guy like Jarvis Brownlee Jr. with his aggressive press mindset inside a little bit. You also talk about Evan Ingram, 25.1% first read target share, and then 14% designated design target rate. All of that word salad to say that there are ways that the Jaguars have been able to scheme up their wide receivers effectively to where they've been a little bit of quarterback proof. Like getting the ball in these guys' hands and letting them be the playmaker, you've seen it work. And we saw it work last week in the Jags' attempted comeback. And so given our conversation earlier about Kenneth Murray and Luke Gifford and these rookies playing in the middle of the field, I see an avenue to where, Mac Jones maybe doesn't win this game by himself, but he does, the bare minimum to let his skill position players thrive in a game against the Titans where they just aren't doing the little things right.
That's a fair argument, and I don't think it's crazy. It just all hinges on Mac Jones being good at football, and that's where I think I have you, because it's not been good. I mean, you mentioned last week, 2 touchdown performance, 200 and some odd 235 passing yards. That it was a mounted comeback in the fourth quarter, but that was, it's the end of the fourth quarter in a comeback that didn't work. They just, caught a Houston team playing too conservatively at the end of a game when they had a big lead. And he had 235 passing yards. More than half of those came in the last 2 drives of the game that ultimately became garbage time because they did not mount the comeback. Both of his touchdowns in that garbage time at the end of the game because they did not mount the comeback. It wasn't a bad performance by any means, but for 3.5 quarters of the game, he did not do anything. He was not effective, and they weren't effective running the ball either. They're top 2 runners, 3.5 yards per carry, 4 yards per carry. Not terrible, but it's not going to win you a game, and that's against a Houston run defense that we have a recent marker to compare it to because the Titans just played that run defense with more success. So I am counting out that I think this game would be a far more interesting talk if Trevor was still alive. He unfortunately is no longer with us. And so thanks to the dirtiest player in the league for some reason, Azeez Al-Shaair. I don't have much to say besides the fact that I think this is just a good spot for the Titans is the biggest thing. I think my mindset for them coming into this game is very similar to what it was coming off of the Texans game. I'm kind of flushing the game last week. Not that I don't think it matters, but just because I think it is such an outlier in the way that it went. I think it's less likely than not to be a real consistent data point in the trend of this team. I was saying after the Houston win that I felt like the end of the season for this team would continue to trend upwards. I'm not swayed off of that. Now, in this game, if it ends up being ugly, then I will absolutely recalibrate going forward because it is not how I am anticipating it going. I think there's a decent chance the Titans will win this game. I think there's a decent chance that they win really convincingly. I think there's a decent chance in the Jaguars do not score many points at all against a Titans team that, the defense last week showed that they can be gettable depending on the situation. But it's a Titans team that, they came back to Nashville off of a 2-game road trip where they have a big, massive emotional divisional win in Houston. They learned the hard way that they, managed the next week into their next game incorrectly. They started off horrendously. I don't think that after that performance, you're going to get a lackluster game from them here. I think that this is a big pride spot against a divisional opponent at home for the first time in a month, where they want it bad, and they want to prove that last week was an aberration and not who they are. So the combination of the spot for the Titans, just narratively, in addition to the Jaguars and their quarterback situation, I think it makes for a strong Titans matchup.
Yeah, and I think that's very fair. I see where you're coming from. I think the biggest key of this game is to not let a really bad run game get going. With
Kenneth says Easton is scared. Levis will pull Levis. I am not scared of that.
Apparently, well, I guess you are, according to
he might do it. I'm not particularly scared of it because for the past month he hasn't shown that he does it. Yeah. He's done it one time in a month. So
I think Kenneth is very scared. He has some PTSD that it continues to.
He's right that if Levis has an awful game against the Jaguars, I will be full of copium on Monday morning. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Especially for a guy like Levis, there is ways, I think, also, like you talked about earlier. Like, I don't think that the Titans really need to pass a whole heck of a lot if they can get Tony Pollard going on the ground. Like, this could be a Tony Pollard, designated Tony Pollard performance. Just like let him eat on the ground. But there is something, I guess, to be said that there are other ways the Titans can lose this game outside of their defense. We talked about Colt Anderson and him assuming that his players will be able to perform on Sunday. That's a big thing, I think. Talk about, Will Levis. Will Levis, if he kind of reverts back to form and is not kind of loses some of this traction, I do think that is something that we could see. But at the end of the day, I think you're right. there is a lot of narrative here for the Titans. And that's something that we've seen over the past 2 weeks, something that this team seems to ride a lot on emotionally. Whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, you go off of the Houston Texans win, where Amy Adams-Strunk is very, needed that win bad. And there were a lot of players were saying that they played that game for Amy, and like, this one was for Amy. And then you come off of the Washington one saying that, you're hungover from the success. Now it's time to prove that that wasn't true. So I think there's definitely I think there is a narrative portion of it that gives them the more motivation here, and they makes them the more desperate team for sure. But at the end of the day, I think I'm with Lewis. He gets a weird feeling that they're going to tie. I want to see it. Give me a tie. Me and Nick Suss have been waiting for a tie all season. And me and him are going to be two little giddy schoolboys in the press box if we get a tie, because I don't know. There's something about ties that I love them. They're fun. They're an oddity. And
that's so gross.
And I know
I couldn't like feel that more differently on ties than you.
All right. Well, I think that's where we're going to end our conversation on the Titans and Jags and get over to a couple of little bets here at the end of the show.
No better way to spice up a slop game like this than by betting copious amounts of money on it.
You want to go with your play of the day for the Titans game first, or do you want to save that one for
Let's
last?
get the regular gauntlet out. Yeah.
Let's
my play of the day
gauntlet.
is like 9 plays. It's an escalator and a basement dweller. We're gonna get some exotic. I've got some exotics for you here.
All right. Well, I'm excited for those. So we're actually going to do a abbreviated best bet gauntlet where we're going to give you 5 picks combined that are our 5 favorite / best picks of the week. Maybe you can parlay all these together and get you a nice payday, because I don't know about you, Easton, but I've been riding hot for the past week and a half. Like, I'm finally getting into after the post November is when the sharps, in the squares start to really fall off and the sharps get hot. It's been an odd year altogether, but I'm starting to feel myself once again. And I think that's a good thing for everybody who listens to our favorite bets. And so I think that's what we're going to do this week again, because I like the bets that we have. So I'll go with mine first. What are mine? I have 2 bets. You have 3 against the spread. I'm taking Miami -6 in a game that, doesn't need a lot of statistical backing, although it is a good spot for Miami nonetheless. Home favorites of 6 points here. And before we get into that, Kenneth says, I've done all I can to warn JT Easton. He keeps ignoring me and losing money. I have to give Kenneth credit. Like, he's gone like every week, like I give out, like early in the season, there was like 5 weeks in a row where Kenneth was like, bad pick, JT. I'd ignore that one. And then that would be the one that really crushed me. And I was like, damn. Yeah, damn. Kenneth got me. Kenneth's been kind of sharp this year in a year that sharps have not been sharp. Do with that what you will.
Which means Kenneth is a big fat square. That was a super copium way. That was a team cope way of saying that you're a loser, Kenneth, because he can't handle the truth.
Correct. I'm going with Miami -6 this week at home. And outside of the statistical backing that the Jets have been the least profitable opponent against the spread against the Dolphins since 2016, where they're 3-13 straight up and 4-11-1 against the spread. Like, this is a team that just cannot find a way to win against the Dolphins. And the Dolphins, back in their home stadium against a team with Aaron Rodgers, who has lost all hope. Breece Hall most likely not playing this week. Feels like a team that's kind of packing it in. This is a Dolphins team that's desperate to keep up with the AFC playoff picture. And I think the matchup, just with what Mike McDaniel has going right now, is a really nice one. Jonnu Smith just essentially taking over Tyreek Hill's role in the offense is incredible to see. And so, like, him,
team, by the way,
him and combined with Devon Achane, both on your fantasy team. I don't know how we let that happen, but
I suddenly own 99% of the offensive output of the Miami Dolphins franchise.
They've been absolutely cooking. Tua's been great. And I think this is a game where they just really hand it to a lifeless Jets team. So I'm taking Miami -6.
Yeah, I'm all over that one with you. My pick here to start is Cleveland +6.5. Kind of a scary spot to back them. They're playing their second of 2 games against Pittsburgh this week. I don't need them to win, and I don't think they will win. I just need them to cover. And Jameis, let's all bow our heads real quick to pray in reverence to Jameis and his nationally televised prayer Sunday that we need the Lord to deliver Jameis from the pick sixes. I think the Lord does deliver here. Listen, this is a spot where I know that it's a revenge spot for Pittsburgh. They lost that game on national television in the snow to this team not too long ago. And so it would reason to say, well, this is where they come back big. This is once again, I mean, like we talked about in that game, before that game, you, me, and Paul Koharski at the Titans facility talking about how this is the highest the market's going to be on Pittsburgh. They're back to being really high on Pittsburgh after they put up a 40 burger last week against a team that they were expected to maybe struggle with a little bit. It is a spot where historically at home as a big favorite over a field goal, Mike Tomlin led teams do not cover. They just don't. And so I think that they win this game by 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 points, and they don't cover the 6.5 that are being laid at the feet of the Jameis-led Cleveland Browns. So Lord, deliver Jameis from these pick sixes, and let's get this cover.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. Do you want to do another one, or you want me to go with my second one here? Because I think you roll them. You
do another one, and then my last one's the Titans spoiler, and that'll take us into
perfect.
My Titans
all right.
exotic.
So my other pick this week is I'm going with Chicago plus 3.5 as the away dogs against San Francisco. This is another really, a narrative one. And also it helps that you're getting the fired coach bump. You get Thomas Brown as your coach. That's the one part that I really like about this, but this is also just two teams that couldn't be far apart right now. Like San Francisco is just kind of a jumbled mess. Like you lose CMC, you lose Trent Williams. Like this is a team that Jordan Mason as well. We're getting Isaac Guerrero this weekend. Thank goodness.
The Renaissance is upon us.
Let that boy cook. I think this week, but nonetheless, like this is a team that when you look at what Brock Purdy's stats are without Trent Williams, and this is it's not great. And this is a Chicago team that I think really likes Thomas Brown and wants to play up to that spot where you get that new head coach bump.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that reason, I'm taking them over the field goal because I think that Chicago has a really nice chance to kind of put San Francisco away for the year and just win outright in a game that I think they really need for morale and just kind of just like the Titans, they need to kind of wash away what happened last week.
Right. My next one is the Rams plus 5. They're playing the Bills at home. The handicap on this one's super simple. This is the trap game of all trap games for the Buffalo Bills. Just came off of a big win against Kansas City. They now have to go across the country. Big win against Kansas City, then a even bigger beatdown in the snow of the 49ers at home. They now travel across the country to play the Rams in a spot where they are already, by the way, AFC East champions. The Bills are for the earliest that division has been won in a gajillion years. So they're riding really high, and they're looking ahead to perhaps a Super Bowl preview, perhaps the regular season game of the year, Bills Lions this upcoming week. So in week 15. This Rams game is a trap game. This is a Vietnamese tiger trap sandwiched right in between an important stretch for the Bills. And the Rams, for their part, are playing for their playoff lives. They are not dead in the NFC playoffs, but it requires them to win this game. Their likelihood goes way up if they win this one. It goes way down if they don't. So I think that they empty the bag. I think that Stafford and McVay and the boys give them everything they got. And if not win, do cover this 5 points. Kind of an ugly number, kind of a weird dead number at 5. But I think a Rams win outright isn't off the board. I wouldn't bet on them to win outright, but I would bet on them to to lose by a field goal. So I'll go Rams plus 5. And then does that leave me with, or is it you again?
No, that would be you with Titans.
All right.
Titans
So
minus
Titans
3.
minus 3. And I'm not even going to explain the Titans minus 3 because I already have in the episode why I think they're just going to win the game outright. And I think
do you agree with Easton? Go with it. Do you agree with me? Maybe stay away. I don't know.
Well, if you agree with JT, you'd be a real moron to bet with me anyways. So yeah, I mean, don't do that. But if you agree with me, take it. But here are the exotic props we've got in the Titans, Jags. And I've sprinkled a little bit on all of these things. I wouldn't, if I were you, take all of these bets and place all of them. But I'm going to give you a menu to choose from. And we've got some escalators in here. We've got some parlays in here. And we've got some, what's the word for, there's a word in what? There's a word in betting for the opposite of is it a basement stair? No, there's like a word for when
seller?
So yes, yeah. A cellar dweller play is what we're going to call it.
Okay.
I still think that's wrong, but that sounds good. So an escalator is just like when you think a guy might go off, you take their
Yes.
over, then their alt over, and then the bigger alt over. And then the opposite is the cellar dweller play, right? Like going into the basement. So here are the plays that I have. A lot of these do hinge on my theory that the game will play out where the Titans potentially win big. The ones that doesn't necessarily rely on the Titans winning big is the Calvin Ridley plays. So we can start with him. And this is an obvious escalator. The Calvin Ridley revenge game spot. We're obviously taking his over on yards, which when I got it was sitting at checking to get the exact number. 64.5 yards. It was his over. I believe he's still sitting roughly around that range, but we're going to sprinkle a full unit on the over 64.5. We're going to take the escalator ride up to 80 or more yards, 100 or more yards, 110 more yards, sprinkle a half, a quarter, a tenth of a unit all the way up. And then there's a chance that he goes nuclear and has a 120 plus yard day. And then you've hit big on all of those. But for folks that don't know escalator, like don't put a unit on all of them. You will lose money.
Yeah.
It needs to be exponential as you go up. Because the payouts do get bigger. I mean, for example, Calvin Ridley 120 plus yards is plus 600, so that you don't have to put big money on that. You can put $2 on that to make $14, for example. The other Calvin Ridley specific things, I think there's some Ridley parlay opportunities in here. First of all, Ridley anytime touchdown, I think is very live. That is sitting at, last I checked, it was sitting at like plus 200. Really 2 touchdown day is plus 1,500. So I like a little sprinkle on that. Again, just the Ridley nuclear option being a possibility there. And then the ultimate Ridley revenge game, which sounds crazy, but if you had made a similar bet like this on Monday night on Jerry Jeudy, for example, it would have cashed. The hold on. I have so many bets. I'm literally just out here scrolling through them. If you take Ridley 2+ touchdowns, over 4.5 receptions and 100 plus receiving yards, it's plus 2,600. So sprinkle $1 or $2 on that to pay out 50. If we just have a Ridley explosion in this game, that's the Ridley escalator there. Now, and I should have mentioned this at the top. I've been talking on the A to Z pregame show now for 6 weeks or over a month, however long it's been, about how there are a few things in life you need to have on auto pay. You can set up auto pay with your credit card or your debit card. Yeah. You got to have you put your bills on auto pay. You don't need to, so you don't have to worry about them, right? Student loan, put that on auto pay. Streaming subscriptions, auto pay those, rent, put that on auto pay. And then let's put NWI anytime touchdown on auto pay. Okay. That needs to be something that is just, if you have a betting service where they let you set up an auto pay bet every week, just go ahead and set that up for the NWI anytime tutter. They continue to be greedy dirtbags over there in Vegas, making his number lower and lower in each week. I wonder why. But it is all the way down to plus 195. I'm still taking it. You've lowered it, but not enough for me not to take it, Vegas, you scoundrels. I also think that NWI first touchdown is also live, which is like plus 900. So sprinkle on the NWI first touchdown as well. Did you have something to say real quick before I continue?
I was just going to say, what is at what point, like, is there a reality? Is there a reality where we get to like week 18 and he's scored a touchdown every single week and he's getting same like minus 110 odds of like a running back?
I don't think they'll ever do it. It's going to require more volume.
Think it gets?
Because as long as he continues to have 2 or 3 catches every game, they're just going to continue to bet against it. I mean, like, so if let's say he has 1 touchdown every week for the rest of the year, which is basically his pace, right? He had 1 0 touchdown week, 1 2 touchdown week. It's evened out. He has 8 in his last 8. Yeah. I think in week, so by week 18, you've had 13 consecutive touchdown weeks, or almost 13 consecutive touchdown weeks. Mm-hmm. It's probably sitting at like plus 110.
Yeah.
Plus 120.
I think I agree with you.
Yeah. I don't think it ever gets to minus.
No.
I mean, it's going to take him like
have
2 this week, 2 next week. Like it'd have to be outrageous.
It'd be funny.
Right. Like Derrick Henry and NWI have the same odds to score a touchdown. Yeah. Would be funny. Some other bets for you here. Here's the thing about me doubting the Jaguars. We've basically gotten 3 Mac Jones games this year out of the Jaguars, including last week. In all 3 of them, the Jaguars have struggled to score more than 6 points. It was in last week when that trend finally ended, because again, on their final 2 drives of the game in the back half of the fourth quarter, the Texans defense got very sleepy and very conservative and allowed the Jaguars to finally wake up. But before, in the first 3.5 quarters last week, and in the previous 2 games the Jaguars have played, they have scored 6, 7, and 6 points. So I think that there's a chance. You look at the implied total in this game, or excuse me, the implied team total for the Jaguars in this game based on the full total and the spread. Vegas thinks that the Jacksonville Jaguars are scoring 18 or 19 points in this one. I think there's a chance that they end up scoring very, very few points, because again, in 3 Mac Jones games, they almost scored 6 or 7 points. So I've got a Jaguars team total cellar dweller play going down to under 14.5, under 10.5, and under 7.5. Just to, there's a chance they score 1 touchdown or 2 field goals, and then that let me get the actual number for you on if that hits for you. If the Jaguars score, where is it? Under, did I place this bet?
You might have not.
Chat,
I don't know. I did.
Chat,
Did he play this?
Oh no, I did. Jaguars. So actually, this is why I couldn't find it. This book that I'm using is not offering under 7.5. It goes down to 8.5. So I got Jaguars under 8.5 plus 650. So again, exponential play a unit on the Jaguars team total under, which is 18, yep. I think 18.5 points, and then go down 14.5, 10.5, 8.5. And then here's the Titans blowout scenario play. Take Jaguars under 14.5 parlayed with Tennessee minus 9.5 to win the game by 10 points. Which would basically be the Jaguars scoring, 10 and the Titans scoring 20 or 30. That's going to be plus 290 for you. I like that play a lot. So there's a lot of mixing and matching to do here. 2 other miscellaneous ones, because I'm just going. Clearly, I'm looking for ways to make this game interesting for me. NWI long reception. I just kind of stumbled upon this one as I was going through them. His long reception odds are over under 18.5. He's done that in like 4 or 5 consecutive weeks. So I would take his over there to the 1 touchdown play probably to NWI where he catches a 27-yard touchdown. Yeah. And then how about this one? This one is a more sober, actually, probably, like if you ask me for my best bet in this game, this is probably it. Titans first quarter minus a half point. I think that it's going to be an emphasis for this team after the way they started last game. They're all going to come in, coaches, players, everybody. Hey, get your ass in shape, show up hot, lead early. I think the Titans are leading by, 3-0, 7-0, 7-3 after the first quarter has concluded. It's kind of a nervy bet because you may only get 2 drives, maybe even only 1 drive from the Titans in that first quarter. But I think the Titans to win the first quarter just by a point is a really nice play in this one. So there's all the bets. Do with that information what you will.
Love it. That's going to definitely make this game more watchable for a lot of you out there. And I think that's a great place to...
Lewis Chestnut has a crazy... you want to talk about some crazy long shot parlays.
Parker Washington gets 3 touchdowns and over 220 yards. This dude loves Parker
Guess the
Washington.
line. What would... If you're just guessing what Vegas gives you on that parlay, 3 tutters over 220 for Parker Washington. That should be plus
4,500.
I was going to say that should be plus 4 at least.
Yeah. That'd be
because
crazy.
It's never. Not only is it not happening tomorrow, it's never happening in Parker Washington's entire career. Nor is it ever getting that close. So
yes, I think that's a great way to end it there. Jags Titans this weekend should be an interesting one. Thank you, Easton, once again for filling in for Stoney and making your return. We did have one more segment where we were going to do convince me otherwise that Wicked is not just mid.
Oh no,
but
cut for time.
Yeah, we've cut that for time, unfortunately.
Oh no.
Just couldn't put it in here today.
We'll have an hour on that next week.
Don't worry. Maybe an hour on that next week. Either way, this has been the Hot Read podcast on a happy hour Friday. Thank you to Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages, as always, for sponsoring the show. And until Tuesday, when we talk to you after this Titans-Jaguars game, this has been the Hot Read podcast. We will talk to you then.